I'll never forget the evening I was reading a bedtime story to my daughter after working 12 plus hours straight. I was completely burnt out. My voice was hoarse from serving and talking to clients all day long. I was exhausted beyond words, and she was cuddled up beside me trying to connect. But all I felt was dread. I was so overwhelmed and disconnected that this precious moment felt like just another person asking something from me. I was giving all my best energy to work and had absolutely nothing left for my family. And that is when it hit me. How did I get here? It definitely didn't happen overnight. I married young, I had 3 children under 3, and by age 24, I found myself a single mother. And then when I remarried and we became a blended family, the financial pressure was overwhelming. So I did what any responsible adult would do. I continued to work 12 plus hours a day, every day. I had already been doing this as a single parent and just continued it after I married. I told myself that this was just temporary. And if I could keep this up for the next few years, we could potentially even pay our house off. But further down the road and somewhere along the way, while working really hard to solve financial freedom, I became obsessed with our finances and saving money. I was laser focused on paying off all of our debt, but I thought it would solve all of life's issues for us, that I actually lost sight of everything else. My energy, all of it, went to my clients. I had to be on for them because they were paying me to be professional, friendly, and attentive to their needs and give them my absolute best. But my family, they got all the leftovers. I'd come home completely depleted, and the people that mattered most got the angry, frustrated, annoyed mother and wife. My clients always saw me at my best, but my children always saw me at my worst. And how backwards is that? I always said that family came first. That was my heart, but my actions showed something totally different. So I started asking myself, what would my children remember about their mother? One that is angry, frustrated, and tired, and one they knew nothing about beyond that? That realization hit me like a freight truck. I was losing time during my children's only childhood. And for what? A paid off house that they won't even want to come back to visit? Within weeks of that story time incident, my body started sending me warnings that I could no longer ignore. I realized that I might not physically be able to continue to go on like this. And that's when I knew something needed to change. And in that moment of complete burnout, everything became crystal clear. I thought I wanted financial freedom, no debt, paid off house, financial security. But what I wanted now was so much more simple and so much more important. I wanted to feel healthy and alive again, physically and mentally. I wanted to stop being a slave to paying off our house. I wanted to actually live, something I had not done in so many years. I wanted to stop just surviving. But most of all, I wanted my children to know they had a mother who was there for them, who loved them, who made time for them, and who invested in them, and who tried her best to mend everything she could for them. I realized that it was more important to be present for my children than to hit some financial milestone. If I needed to be more frugal, so be it. That's completely fine. Money meant nothing if I was too burned out to enjoy the fruit of it. But most importantly, I wanted my family to feel love from me because I am ultimately the one that sets the tone for the entire home. And in that moment, I knew that everything needed to change. I had to change, but also I had to change for me because I didn't even like who I became. And you can't truly love others until you learn to love yourself first. This all felt like a big revelation of relief, terror, and liberation all at the same time. I knew at that point I definitely had to cut back on my hours and start saying no to unnecessary commitments and stop trying to please everyone all of the time. but keep my family as the core focus. And that was the moment that I realized I needed to stop living for someone else's definition of success and start living for my own for the first time. Once I knew what I actually wanted, instead of thinking what I thought I wanted, everything started finally falling into place. The decisions that once paralyzed me became obvious. Should I take on another client, or would that prevent me from being present with my family? Should I work late again? Would that help me feel healthy and alive? The first choice I made was probably the hardest, because I had to start disappointing people. Clients who wanted more of my time, commitments that I made when I was running on empty. People were used to me always saying yes. And that made me feel that I was somehow trustworthy and reliable. But here's what I discovered. When you know what actually matters to you, disappointing the wrong people becomes easier. And once you know what you actually want, the question is, are you brave enough to follow through with it? Now, I have a question for you. Have you ever had a moment like mine where you realized you wanted something that you thought you wanted, but your heart yearned for something different? Maybe you're in that place right now where you know something needs to change, but you're not exactly sure what it is. Or maybe you do know, but you were afraid of making a change because it will disappoint others. Leave me a comment and tell me if you could design a life that you actually want and you are really ready to start living intentionally instead of just surviving. What genuinely brings you joy? What genuinely brings you peace? What sparks you and what lights your fire? What would that look like? And next week, I will be sharing a video on my personal experience of when I started disappointing people and finally started choosing my family and my own values over what I thought that society was expecting of me. And until then, remember, you are allowed to want what you want, and I will be here cheering you on. I will see you in next week's video.